Living during a pandemic is brutal. Living during a pandemic when there's 2 feet of snow on the ground is more brutal. We are making history here today on Stuffed because it's Stuffed live from my home. It's not anarchy, it's just college basketball. The train stays on the tracks right now.
This is March. Chicken vodka wrap is to die for.
Welcome to Stuff with Jon Rothstein. Best player you don't know in college basketball.
We have a very high bar on this show. If I let myself go, I'll be 400 pounds. I just want to make sure I don't go all in on chocolate chip pancakes at the diner down the street.
Forget about not sleeping until May. I may not sleep at all, but I wouldn't trade it for anything else. College hoops. Everything else is just secondary.
Who's ready to nosh? Welcome to Stuff with Jon Rothstein, Blizzard Edition. The first time we are bringing you this show from my home. In just a couple minutes, we are going to be joined by Villanova head coach Jay Wright. But first, a couple of big picture topics on college hoops in a New York Minute. I have told you time and time again that I feel that this is the season of the outlier in college basketball because, ironically enough, with the exception of Villanova, all of the blue blood programs in the sport that have won multiple national championships have shown major holes. And how about this? The 4 teams that played in the Champions Classic in November, Duke, Michigan State, Kentucky, and Kansas, now have a combined record of 31-28. Kentucky, Duke, and Michigan State all in major jeopardy of missing the NCAA tournament. Will the American Athletic Conference rename itself Houston Island? It's starting to feel that way because I think there is a legitimate chance right now that if Houston wins the American Athletic Conference tournament in March, that this league could send only one team to the NCAA tournament in Indianapolis. Kelvin Sampson is doing at Houston a job that's comparable to what John Calipari did at Memphis in Conference USA. The Cougars have separated from that entire league. And then a major game tonight on the horizon in Austin as Baylor travels to Texas. There's been so much conversation this season about whether or not Gonzaga could go undefeated and enter the NCAA tournament undefeated. The questions could start to percolate towards Baylor if the Bears can win tonight. Baylor has won 14 of its 16 victories this season by double figures. And if obviously we're going to talk about Baylor winning at Texas, we should talk to somebody who has already won at Texas this season. That is Villanova head coach Jay Wright, who makes his Stuff debut right now. And Coach, we know that obviously coaches in college basketball are well compensated, but I'm curious, has it been nice to save a little extra money on the dry cleaning this season?
Yeah, I definitely have, and didn't even have to buy my new suits. I usually get a good bunch of new suits every year, and didn't have to do it this year. So we have definitely saved money, man.
Well, Coach, you mentioned your suits, and we want to send our condolences. We know that your longtime tailor, Gabe D'Annunzio, passed away recently from COVID-19. It's been such an awful time in our country, and these are the stories that obviously just break our heart. How would you describe for you personally the relationship you had with your tailor?
Our guy, Gabriel D'Annunzio, is such a good man. He came over here at 13 years old from Abruzzi, Italy, and just made it on his own as a tailor. Not a lot of education, just worked his way to build this great business, and always took care of us and took care of our assistants. Gave our assistants a lot better deal than he gave me, I'll tell you what. But that was planned, and he loved doing that. And just a guy that he had the same passion about clothes and making people look good and feel good as we do about college basketball. Great man that we lost at 76 because of COVID.
Well, it's been 11 months or so right now that we've been dealing with this pandemic, and you also personally had to deal with COVID. For you personally, what were the feelings like when you found out that you were diagnosed as positive?
It was really gut-wrenching because we came home on the 23rd of December from a great win on the road at Marquette, where we were feeling like we were finally getting it going, having coming out of an earlier quarantine in October, and we were feeling great. It was, you play that game before Christmas, and if you get a win, a road win especially, you're so excited. You're going to spend time with your family, and on the 25th that night, I started getting symptoms, and I just thought, oh no, man, this can't be. And 26th, I tested positive, and we had planned to give our guys some time with their families, and then it turned out a couple other guys got it from me. And what was really wild, John, was we went into quarantine, and we went into quarantine for 11 days. We came out on the 12th day and practiced. On the 12th day, 2 guys tested positive, and then we had to go into another quarantine. So telling those guys and calling those parents and doing a Zoom to tell them that you've just been in a hotel for 11 days, came out for 1 day, and now you got to go back in again for 11 days was brutal, and is one of the things that all college coaches are dealing with this year.
Well, the mental health part of this is a big factor when it comes to dealing with the pandemic. I'm curious, though, what do you think the mental health would be of your players if there were no games going on right now as a release?
That's the key factor here, John. Every time something would happen, we'd get in a Zoom with our players, and the first thing I would say to them was, guys, and I told them back in September that this season is not about winning championships. It's about your mental health, you guys growing as students, as men, and as players, finding a way for each one of you to get better this year, and for us to be the best team that we could be by the end of the year. That's what we talked about. So
volume just went out.
When we would go into any situation where we had to say we're going into quarantine or something like that, I would say to the guys, look, if anybody wants to opt out, I'm good with it. We'll figure out a way to get you back in this. And we, when we told the guys, every time they would say, Coach, whatever we have to do to play. We've been home all spring, all summer. We haven't played, and we've already been home. We don't want to go back home. We don't want to leave our dorm rooms. We want to stick with our guys. We'll do whatever we have to do to play. These guys really appreciate any efforts that we're putting forth to allow them to play.
Well, allowing them to play is obviously a big deal. And, it's been interesting following your program as long as I have. The one thing that Villanova and you have done so well is obviously control the controllables, the way your players eat, the way they prepare, the way they build habits on and off the court. For you personally, what has it been like not having control because of COVID?
I think that might be one of the great challenges for all coaches. We feel like, especially during basketball season, that we can define our day before the game preparation, our travel, our day of the game preparation. For instance, we play St. John's tomorrow night because our group around us is cut down. Our managers get ahead. They set up the locker room. All the guys' uniforms are hanging up. The sneakers are in there. We don't have enough guys to do that. We were talking today about it. Everybody's gonna have to carry their own stuff in. We're gonna have to, all those little things are not the same this year. Even sometimes when we were in the bubble, they told us, hey, we can't, we get grass-fed milk, grass-fed beef, everything is healthy. And they said, hey, you're staying in a casino. Like, we don't have that stuff. You're not gonna be able to do it. So everything's been different this year. And that's where I really commend our staff, and I'm really impressed with our players, their ability to handle all these changes, because as you said, John, we try to really control everything we can, and we're really disciplined about what we do home and on the road, and we haven't been able to do it the same this year.
And all of this is obviously to be in a position like everybody else to play in the NCAA tournament. But if you play in the Big East, there is a crown jewel before the NCAA tournament. That's the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. This has been a very, very popular topic in college basketball right now, because obviously if the goal is to get to the NCAA tournament, conference tournaments could be a hurdle in front of that. The Big East tournament, though, as you and I both know, is a different breed of cattle when it comes to championship week and conference tournaments, because of obviously the prestige of the event. How does this tournament get done safely given what's going on in the world?
Well, first, John, you're absolutely right about that. I think other conferences that play their tournaments at different sites each year, they're not dealing with as much tradition and just core of their conference as we are, with the Big East tournament and Madison Square Garden and New York City. It's as much a part of the Big East as any great players, coaches, more really. And so we're trying to do everything we can. And Val Ackerman and Stu Jackson and the athletic directors in the Big East are really working hard at this. I think we've got a good plan, and I don't want to go too much into it, but I think we got a plan where we can quarantine and isolate teams. And one of the things that's important, and I think the NCAA, who gets a lot of criticism, but I think when they do a good job, we got to give it to them. They put out what the criteria and the protocols will be for the NCAA tournament in Indianapolis. So by doing that early, they gave us in the Big East a chance to set up the same type of protocols for the Big East tournament so that we could transition once you get into the Big East tournament. If you go right from there to Indianapolis, if you're fortunate enough to make the tournament, you're pretty good. You're bubble to bubble, and you're in pretty good shape right there. And I think the Big East and it's Val Ackerman and Stu Jackson have done a great job of setting that up. So I think as of right now, we know everything changes. I think we can pull this off in New York and at Madison Square Garden.
Well, and obviously the goal when you get to Madison Square Garden is to win the event. You have a team, again, that's going to have an outstanding chance to do that. Through all the off-the-court drama and everything you've dealt with on February 2nd, how would you assess the 2021 Villanova Wildcats?
John, I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but we just played a game against Seton Hall, and I was getting frustrated during the game. Just that it's the end of January, and we're doing things that are just so out of character for us now. Some of it's just Seton Hall just being really good, but after the game, I had to apologize to the team. I said, guys, I'm out of my mind. Like I just can't stand there and watch what we're doing and thinking it's January, but it's not your fault. It's not your fault. I gotta get my act together. We gotta keep working hard. So to answer your question, if a Villanova fan looked at us right now, we're not where we would normally be, but in assessing our team right now, having gone through this, 3 quarantines and all the challenges that all the other teams are too, I feel good about what they've done. And I think the players and the staff should be really proud about where we are right now. Now, we got new challenges every day. Every team, and you have your great saying, stay positive, test negative, but every morning, we all get a text saying all negative today. And then,
right.
Everybody sends thumbs up, prayer signs, it's every day. And living that way is really tough on these players. And so I'm proud of every challenge they've taken on so far.
Well, one, I think, thing that's reassuring is if you're a coach, you want to have a steward on the floor that you have a lot of confidence in. And you couldn't have more confidence right now in Colin Gillespie. And coach, sometimes I think when people are covering college basketball and they want to talk about the best players, they automatically talk about the players who are going to be projected to be the best prospects at the next level. There may be players at the point guard position that are projected as better pros than Colin Gillespie, but now it seems like he's establishing himself as the best pure table setter in college basketball. How reassuring is it to have him running your team?
Well, that was well put, John, about the difference between college and who's a great college player, who's a great pro player. And we've had a lot of great college point guards, great. And it's something that we try to impress upon our players and their parents, that there is a value to being an outstanding college basketball player. And you can actually hurt your ability to be the best college basketball player that you can be by trying to impress NBA scouts. And it's actually not going to help you with the NBA scouts. Being the best college basketball player you can be is going to help you with NBA scouts more than trying to impress them. And, with Ryan Arcidiacono and Jalen Brunson and Scotty Reynolds and all these guys and Malik Waynes and I hope I don't forget it. Randy Foy, everybody, those guys have all done that. And they help Colin understand that. And I think Colin's at a point where, having played with Jalen Brunson his freshman year and just gotten beaten up, but battling him, and Jalen talks to him daily. To answer your question finally, it is the greatest feeling in the world to go on the road and know that you have a guy that is going to be the toughest, smartest guy on the floor, and is going to translate everything you want your team to do and your program to do on every play.
Well, and he obviously brings your starting five together, which is one of the best starting fives in the sport. But, we talked about this in the preseason. The key for this Villanova team to maybe reach its pinnacle will be the development of its bench. How would you assess that area as we are now, just weeks away from Selection Sunday?
That's an area that that COVID or this pandemic has affected more than I think people realize, is the development of your bench, because you need all the games. Let's say a guy is playing 18 minutes a game. He obviously needs a lot more games to get his minutes up, So where a starter in 3 games can play 90 minutes, it takes a guy off the bench maybe 6 games to do that. So the less games has really affected our bench development. However, having said that, I'm really pleased with Cole Swider and Brandon Slater. I think they're really coming on. I think they would have come on a lot earlier if we could have played more games. And Eric Dixon had a little injury due to one of our quarantines. Right when he came out of quarantine, he hurt it. The day we came out, he hurt his Achilles, and then our next quarantine, he couldn't rehab. But he's coming, and we got Chris Archidiacono and if Brian Antoine, if we can get some days backed up where we get Brian Antoine healthy practicing, we have a chance. We get a chance to have some really good depth.
When you're going to need that depth on Wednesday night against the St. John's team that's clearly playing its best basketball of the season. They've won 4 straight games. What have you taken away from what you sampled from the Red Storm on film?
Great respect for what the job Mike Anderson has done in that, as chaotic as it looks and as chaotic as they make you play, it is a defined, disciplined system. Actually, they are very consistent at what they do, and they do it together, and they do it intelligently. And I'm talking about a kind of a chaotic style of play, but it's very intelligent, and it makes teams like us uncomfortable. And that's the object of the game. You don't want to go match somebody up and just have a pretty ballet out there. You want to make someone uncomfortable and make them do things they don't want to do. And they've always done that to us. And I think Mike's doing a great job, and they've got good chemistry, they incredible team quickness. So we know we've got our hands full, and we're going into Carnesecca Arena, which I can't. The last time I remember being in there personally was for a Catholic League playoff game a long time ago. So it's going to be pretty cool going in there.
Well, and Jay, it should be obviously a very competitive game, and I'm old enough to remember before you won national championships, and I'm old enough to remember a game now 12 years ago that might have been the best game that you've ever coached at Villanova in terms of how well the game was played. It might have been better than the Carolina game in 2016, and that's the game that you won to go to the Final Four in 2009 against Pittsburgh, and Pitt had a guard in that game named Levance Fields that was the identity of that program. And I don't think they're the exact same player, but does Posh Alexander for this St. John's team kind of give the same affect on that program the same way that Levance Fields did for Pitt 12 years ago?
That's a really interesting analogy. That's a really good comparison. Because what I like about Posh and what Levance Fields did is Posh is coming in as a hyped up freshman and who we know can score, but what the fear he puts in you is the defensive intensity he brings to the floor and how he can take your point guard out of the game. So you and I just talked about us feeling like we got one of the best point guards in the country. And now you're going to play against a team where I think Posh, and he just did it in the Marquette game, where Posh can, as a freshman, he can come in and take your point guard out of the game. And there was a play in the Marquette game where Marquette battled back. They got into a one-possession game. They finally beat the press. They went back to give the ball to Carden, and he came right in between the two of them, had a steal, and it was a two-possession game. It was over. And he puts fear in you, and he's had an incredible impact as a freshman on the Big East and obviously on St. John's.
Well, and Jay, we obviously want to stay focused on the task at hand, but you're also scheduled after St. John's this week on Wednesday to play Xavier on Sunday. They obviously postponed their game against DePaul due to a COVID issue. Is the plan still right now, after you play St. John's on Wednesday, to play Xavier on Sunday?
You know what, John? As I'm talking to you, our athletic director Mark Jackson and our staff, George Howe coach, are working for contingent plans in case we don't. So one of the things I think the Big East is doing a great job is when this happens, we go conference game first. Can we fit in a conference game? And we feel a responsibility to the Big East because we got knocked out and we cost people some games. So
right.
If someone else gets knocked out, we got to give other people a chance to get a game too. So that's going to be first responsibility. And then if we can't fit a Big East game, then we'll look for out of conference game.
Well, obviously, scheduling right now in 2021 is minute by minute, so we'll stay tuned to that. But I know you've talked during this chat about all the things that you have to deal with before you get to the court in terms of coaching. But you are a program right now that's been synonymous, obviously, with the best in the sport for the last, decade. We've heard a lot about Gonzaga and Baylor this season, and obviously they're two great teams that are still undefeated. But you're a team that's only taken one loss, and I know you feel, obviously, that your team still has a lot of room to grow. Despite all that you've had to deal with, has Jay Wright, in his idle time, ever thought about, with this group, winning a third national championship?
You always think about it, as you said, in idle time. It doesn't do you any good. And who knows if it distracts you. But I'd be lying if I say when you see a group, you always dream about what's their greatest level of potential. Sometimes you have a real young group and you realize, hey, we got to get them to be the best they can be. They're too young. They're not ready to win a national championship, but we've got enough experience. If we could get everything going and you get some breaks, and we what it takes. You gotta be playing your best basketball at the right time, and you got to get some breaks. But and now you got to stay healthy. Now we got to get games in. If you don't get a certain number of games in before you get to the Big East and the NCAA tournament, you don't have enough time to make it up. And I think that's one of the things that Baylor and Gonzaga have done a great job of, is gotten a lot of games in, so they continue to improve, and they have veteran teams that are outstanding. I think they are on another level than us right now, but when it comes to the NCAA tournament, it's how good you are at that time, not where you are now, and that's why we want to be playing our best at the end.
Jay, we've seen obviously a little bit of a shift this year, and I touched on this at the top of the show about teams that are normally blue blood programs that are always high seeds in the NCAA tournament struggling. And the common trait between Villanova, Baylor, and Gonzaga is player retention. How much does really the way this season has shifted, and those three teams, your team included, being at the top of college basketball, again reiterate that when we're evaluating teams that can be really good in the sport, returning personnel is much more obviously important than incoming personnel?
Yes, I think this has, I think this pandemic has taught all of us a lot of things about life, about college basketball, about ourselves. And I think one of the things that we might step back and say is, guys like John Calipari, Bill Self, Tom Izzo, Mike Krzyzewski, who get some of the one and done guys and get young guys and stay at the top every year. I think this accentuates what a great job they do and what great coaches they are, because they get those young guys in the summer and the fall, and they even sometimes in November you can see them not looking too sharp because they're real young, but they get to practice and play a lot of games, and by the end they're one of the top teams in the country. And it really is great coaching, and they haven't had the chance to do that. A lot of them didn't do it, couldn't coach all. We couldn't coach all summer, and we missed most of our fall as a lot of them did. And so you realize they really do a great job, right? And then the teams that happen to be old this year, like I've thought numerous times, if our team last year with no seniors was going through this, we would be really struggling. Because we were a young team, and early in the year, you remember, John, we went on the road at Ohio State. We looked like a JV team. But by the end of the year, we were playing great basketball. So we were fortunate this year to have the veterans, have the seniors. And I have to mention, we're missing one of our seniors, Demir Cosby-Roundtree. He's a great leader, and we haven't had him all year. And we miss him. But it does show you that if the seniors have a big impact on this type of environment, it shows you during the regular seasons, the little things you're up against, they have a big impact also.
Well, final thing, the only thing more exciting for me than covering a Final Four that would have Villanova, Gonzaga, and Baylor in it would be a great meal. I'm pumped. Super Bowl Sunday's coming. It's a day I always cheat and have a big-time cheat meal. I'm working, obviously, on my portion control, and I only watch football socially. But I'm curious for you. I mean, the last time we had a meal together, I had to be carried at a campus corner near your campus because we ate so much over a massive lunch. But for you personally, if Jay Wright could have one meal at one place, where would it be? What would it be?
Well, Johnny, I'd have to say, since I'm on here with you, I'd like to bring back Garf and go to the Carnegie Deli with you and Garf again. They were some great days. You were a young up-and-coming guy and working your butt off, and the legendary Garf would share stories with us, and you'd be doing it in the Carnegie Deli in the middle of Manhattan with just great people around you. That would be my favorite meal with you, buddy.
Yeah, rest in peace to Mr. G. Well, Jay, we appreciate a couple minutes. Stay safe in these blizzard-like conditions, and obviously safe travels to New York for tomorrow's game against St. John's. Looking forward to being in studio for that.
Thanks, Johnny. Good to see you, buddy.
You guys. Coach Jay Wright making his inaugural appearance here on Stuffs. We are now going to go to our schmooze portion of the show. Now, I know we have a little bit of different makeup today, but I did get salad for lunch. There's some salmon in there. Just one protein. I used to go 2 proteins. Now I'm cutting down a little bit. Portion control has been a big topic for me in the past week. Another big thing, pacing. Pacing while I eat. I feel like if I'm in a situation where I'm doing a better job at the pace in which I eat, I will feel better at the end of the day. It used to be all about volume with me. Now it's a little bit of pacing. Take a little spoonful right here. Hold on. I'm going to get all cumbersome around this camera. That's good stuff. That's the same place I get my cauliflower pizza, Cafe Luke on 71st and 1st. Shout out to 2 of the great brothers on the Upper East Side, Mark and John. Now it's time for the segment of the show we call Don't At Me, Bro. I'm going to take your questions on Twitter. I'm going to hit my salad a little bit more. Send me your questions. I'm at Jon Rothstein. That's John, Jon. This comes from Dominic Stern, and it's John. One of your common tweets states that you think Gonzaga and Baylor are seemingly locks to make the Final Four. If you had to fill out your bracket today, what other teams would be left standing with them in your Final Four? Well, Villanova would definitely be one because they're going to be a 1 seed. And then I think 4 or 5, you have to look at Michigan and Houston. I love this Houston team. And as I said earlier, Kelvin Sampson right now is doing at Houston. And it's not the exact same thing, but it's comparable to what John Calipari did at Memphis when he was in Conference USA. It's very similar to me. Next question. I hate when I drop my spoon. I get the dressing on the end. It's always the worst. Connor Patrick, thoughts on Virginia Tech succeeding without Tyrese Radford, Carter Jara, and Cordell Pemsel? You know, I don't think there's any debate anymore that Mike Young should be the ACC Coach of the Year, and I think he's a dark horse candidate for National Coach of the Year. I don't think he'll get it, but I think he should be a candidate. The amazing thing about Virginia Tech is this. The core of this team, Cordell Pencil, Justin Mutz, Hunter Couture, these were guys that were recruited to be mid-major players, and they're not just playing in the ACC, they're flourishing in the ACC. Ron Warman says, UCLA, no love from the experts. Why? Well, should be pointed out that UCLA lost Chris Smith, Pac-12, all Pac-12 first team preseason, to a torn ACL. And since that game, UCLA is 8-1. The one loss was at the buzzer to Stanford. UCLA has flaws. They're not great defensively. But again, they need to be given a little bit more credit. A massive game looming for the Bruins Saturday against crosstown rival USC. This is from Dustin Bleeweiss. And Sean, it's been a very disappointing few games for my Pitt Panthers. What has to happen for them to turn this around? You know, it's an interesting question from Dustin because part of what I think Pitt had to deal with after beating Duke at home was human nature. You get more attention. People are talking about you. People are writing about you. And if you're a program that is trying to rebuild itself, it's a lot harder to deal with that than for, say, a program that is already used to dealing with that type of attention. It's new territory for the Pitt Panthers. This is from Jared Dittmer. And it's John. Wisconsin has been struggling lately. I got salad on my index cards. That's never a good thing. Just don't want to pick up my dry cleaning bill with all this. A little tight quarters here. Wisconsin has been struggling lately. Do you still think they can make a run come March? Yes, I do. Wisconsin's obviously one of the oldest teams in college basketball. And this is not a cliche. Greg Gard would probably tell you the same thing. It comes down to shot making for the Badgers. One of the reasons why the Badgers were able to rally last year and win the Big Ten regular season title, they shot the basketball exceptionally better during the last month of the season than they did for all the months prior. Massive game for Wisconsin tonight against Penn State. Not just for Wisconsin to get back on track, but Penn State under interim coach Jim Ferry are on the bubble watch right now. Penn State's won at Virginia Tech. They've beaten Wisconsin. They've beaten Rutgers. If Penn State wins tonight at Wisconsin and gets 2 wins over the Badgers, they will be firmly in the NCAA tournament picture. Next question. Richmond Weaver wants to know, how do we explain the Clemson free fall after their COVID pause? Well, they're playing really good teams in the ACC. Another thing, maybe Clemson was playing a little bit over its head early and they had an experienced team together at the start of the season. But Clemson's equity will hold up long term unless they have a total free-for-all, because they've beaten Purdue, they've beaten Maryland, they've beaten Alabama, they've beaten Louisville. Clemson has a lot of big wins on that resume and a big game coming up against North Carolina tonight. Gil Bolberg says, can Western Kentucky get in that large berth in the NCAA tournament, or do they have to win the CUSA tourney? You know, I've watched Western Kentucky now probably close to 10 times, and I firmly believe that this is a team that can't just make the NCAA tournament, but it can win games and advance in the NCAA tournament. And it's more than just Charles Bassey, but this is one thing I want to bring up. On Sunday, when I looked at the net ratings and rankings, Western Kentucky was 81, Marshall was 68. Western Kentucky beat Marshall twice, won a game at Alabama, lost to West Virginia by 6 on a neutral court. I don't understand sometimes the way these metrics are rated the way they are, and the metrics are great. I love them. They're obviously a good base. Ken Pomeroy stuff, it's a tremendous tool, but it's not everything, and the net, again, with this example, proves it's very flawed. This goes from Henry the Puggle, and John, it's been a disappointing year for my Kentucky Wildcats and Georgia Bulldogs. Do you see any way either program can turn around their seasons and make a run in the SEC tournament? I do not. Next question. This is from FQSMU. Who in the AAC has the best chance to be a second bid? It is more likely that the AAC is a 1-bid league, 2-bid league, or 3-bid league. I think it's trending towards being a 1-bid league, personally. I think they may rename the AAC right now Houston Island. I don't see anybody touching the Cougars, but I will say this. Isaac Brown, the interim head coach at Wichita State, has done a tremendous job in a difficult situation and has put Wichita State in position to be the second best team in this conference. Wichita State, if it can make a move in the second half of February, in my opinion, would be the team best suited to make a run at the NCAA tournament. Next up, and that's it. All right, let's go down to our final segment called News and Nuggets. I'm going to take another bite out of my salad right now as I continue to work on this. Again, pacing and portion controls everything. Illinois, a team that a lot of people are going to like in their bracket, are 9-2 this season in games where Adam Miller scores 9 or more points. That's what you call an X factor. Now, LSU blew a game on Saturday against Texas Tech, has really struggled defensively. They're 6-0 this season when they hold opponents to 75 or less. Tigers got to aim to get back on track Wednesday against Alabama. No Darius Days for LSU. He was injured, on Saturday against Texas Tech. And, I just had a question about Mike Young. One thing to point out as well when you talk about Virginia Tech, the Hokies are becoming a dual threat in college basketball. He's known as a great offensive coach. In 2 games last week against Notre Dame and Virginia, Virginia Tech held its opponents to just 51 points. That was an impressive performance by the Hokies. And a bunch of games to watch tonight. I mentioned Penn State at Wisconsin. Nittany Lions playing with great momentum. Illinois at Indiana, just another night in the Big Ten. And then the big one in Austin between Baylor and Texas. Shaka Smart back on the sidelines. The Longhorns are obviously going to have their team fully intact for the first time in a couple of weeks. Just another day in college basketball. We have obviously dealt with the elements. There's 2 feet of snow outside. But we have made another week of Stuffed, in my opinion, a rousing success. We don't see horizons on this show. We only look forward, and our forward is to Selection Sunday, March 14th. Again, as we count down, we are inching closer to the 5-week mark, and that will be Sunday, to what our country, our nation, our sport deserves. A moment to rekindle the excitement for the greatest event that exists in sports. Stay positive, test negative. And remember, in the airport of life, college basketball is the Delta Sky Club.